Hey, Robin, can you hear me okay?
I can. I just
Okay.
realized let me put it on you. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Just need to spot you, Dennis, not the hall. There we go. And
Okay.
then
Ready to go?
we are.
I'm gonna wait just a minute or two here. How's the weather up there, everybody?
I hear laughing in the hall.
Hmm. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and jump in. Yes. All right. So welcome, everybody. Uh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for showing up on this stormy night uh, down in Sacramento, where I am. It's actually been nice. It's been raining off and on all day, and then the sun will come out, and then 5 minutes later it'll rain. And just before the sun went down, we had two really beautiful rainbows, and we very seldom get rainbows down here. So it's been really kind of a pretty day. Um, so we'll sit for a little bit. Afterwards, the topic tonight is going to be entitled 10 Books That Mattered. And it's not a book review. It was interesting when I started off to prepare this. Um, I started identifying books that I recommend to people a lot. And then I realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do. What I wanted to talk about were books that actually had significantly impacted my practice and had been kind of.
Hi, Dennis. I don't know if you can hear us, but you're frozen. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Dennis said that just as he's saying that the weather was good, I guess it got bad, and so it shut down his system. So he's rebooting, and he will join us as soon as his computer reboots. But we can go ahead and start our meditation. So sitting up nice and tall, however your practice is, just finding a comfortable seat and closing your eyes or keeping a soft gaze, touching into your breath and awareness in your body. And Dennis will bring us out of meditation in 30 minutes or so. Thank you all for showing up tonight.
Okay, everybody, I'm back. I apologize for that. Um, I know we've already started, but wherever you are in your sitting, maybe just take a moment to check in and notice the quality of your awareness. So in sitting practice and life, both the quality of our awareness, the quality of the knowing drives everything. So whatever's happened so far, uh, opening to your body, feeling points of connection, experiencing your breath. Um, what is the level of clarity of awareness actually connecting with the experience as it arises and unfolds? And secondly, what is the quality of the knowing? So it's one thing to place our attention on a sensation in the body or the sensations that are unfolding of an emotional experience and feel the sensation. It's another thing for the mind actually to be knowing what is being experienced. So both of these things are required for insight to arise. So I invite you to watch those two things during the sitting, and if the quality of the awareness itself and the quality of the knowing seem to be low, they're not acute, they're not clear, then experiment with what's required, what's needed to bring up the clarity of the awareness and the clarity of the knowing. Just these foundational, important, basic skills. So just a gentle reminder to check in with the experience that you're having and notice the quality of the awareness that's been present and the quality of the knowing that is taking place. In addition to being the foundation for insight, these are the things that generate interest and curiosity and are a natural antidote to sluggishness and sleepiness. So we'll start bringing this sitting to a close, and maybe take a moment. I'm inviting you to take a moment to reflect on the experience that you had during the sitting, uh, not so much in an analytical way, but in an experiential way, just reviewing what happened, uh, whether you attempted to look at the quality of awareness and knowing, and if so, how did that impact the sitting? What did you learn during the sitting? There's always some element of learning or understanding or insight every time you sit, as opposed to just being on automatic pilot in sitting. So just taking a minute or two at the end of the sitting to reflect in this way, I've found to be really helpful over the long run. And then allow your awareness to begin moving out into the body as a whole. And when you do that, actually notice what happens. What is the change when you move from a more narrow focus on an anchor or an object of meditation and start opening back up? Uh, what is that actual experience? How does it feel in the body and in the mind? And feel the weight of the body connecting with the floor and the seat or cushion, and noticing the level of energy and the sense of ease and relaxation if that's happened during this sitting. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'll come back in to a group as a whole. Okay, so welcome back. So much for my assessment of the weather being so great here. But knocked out my internet there for a moment. Hopefully we won't have any more of that tonight. So we will take a quick break, just like 5 minutes or so. And then I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the one-day retreat I'll be doing with Mountain Stream this Sunday. And then we'll go into the discussion for the evening and move forward from there. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, I'm back again. So, Robin, does it look like we have most everybody back?
I think so, but I can double check in the hall really quick. But
Okay.
I think it's definitely been 5 minutes, so we should be good.
All right. Okay, so we'll dig in. All right. So are you recording this?
I am, but thank you so much for the reminder. I'm always afraid I'm going to forget. Technology.
Okay. So I don't see the little recording message.
Mm. It
The
says
last time.
record on mine, so I don't
Okay.
know. Oh, well, because
Okay.
I recorded their meditation. That's why.
Okay.
So that's already
All
on.
right. So we're good to go.
We're good to go.
Okay. All right. So, well, good evening again, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to start with just putting in a pitch for the one-day retreat I'll be doing with Mountain Stream in person, no hybrid, on this coming Sunday. And the topic, um, for some people, sounds like it's not an inviting topic. It's the topic is uncertainty, confusion, doubt, and disappointment. And actually, I think it's a really fascinating and important topic because those elements, for most of us, are real and continuing aspects of our experience in life. And it's easy to think of them as separate and discrete states of mind or experiences. And um, what we're going to be exploring on Sunday is that one way to understand them is that they are actually a continuum and a manifestation of one underlying aspect of how we're relating to experience. And what you ask may be that one underlying aspect of experience. Um, and you'll have to wait until Sunday to find out. So I think it'll be a really interesting day. I hope you can make it. Robin has told me that the response is so good that we may have to rent the fairgrounds. There's so many people. So if you're coming, make sure that you register early. So, okay. And then I'm going to start my talk now. And the way um, visually this is set up for me, sometimes I can't see people raise their hand. So if a question comes up and you feel that it would be helpful to ask during the talk, uh, just turn on your mic and say, Dennis, I have a question. Don't worry about my seeing you and recognizing you, okay? And then if I feel like I've got to finish a thought, I'll just say that. Okay, so I'm going to start in with this presentation tonight, and it's entitled 10 Books That Mattered. And this has been really fascinating for me because, as I mentioned earlier, when I started out, the way I was approaching this was identifying books that I think are really helpful for people to read. I have a series of books that I recommend to people based on the stage of practice they're in. And I realized that that's actually not what was motivating me. And so it's been interesting to see which books got on the list and which didn't. And most of the books, or many of the books, actually, most of the books that I recommend regularly didn't end up on the list. So the criterion for the books I'm going to talk about tonight is that they, in some way, affected the growth and evolution of my practice, and that they acted as a catalyst or a shift, a turning point, uh, a challenge. They were frequently disorganizing, but all of them have the common element that they had a significant impact, which motivated me to actually take action. And so it wasn't just that it was a great read or that conceptually or intellectually it advanced my understanding, which is important. But if it doesn't translate into action, the conceptual or intellectual advancement actually has limited impact on our suffering and our happiness. So, of the 10 books, there 5 of the authors were actively teaching, and in each case within um, 2 years of my reading the book, I was practicing with those individuals. So the impact was really significant, and the draw to actually, excuse me, to be with and study with the authors who were all teachers was very powerful. So for the very first book, this is like going all the way back to my late teens, and I just want to give you a little bit of context. I was raised in a family where my mother's parents were Italian immigrants from Sicily, and a big family, 10 children. My mother was the last of 10, and this was a family who believed um, that the Pope was St. Peter's actual descendant. I mean, this was a form of very committed, fundamental Catholic approach to religion. My father was an immigrant, French Canadian, and I think my dad's, although he was a Catholic, and they both went to church. I think my father's religion was really helping other people. Uh, he was about action in the world, and the traditional Catholic model, although I did catechism and I did the whole thing, just never worked for me. It didn't inspire me, and but I did have this one experience with my father, who would not uncommonly go to work on Saturdays. He was a vice president of a company, and he had an assistant who was an Indian woman, um, and she would like wear saris to work and that. And he told me that she was a meditator, and I had no idea what that meant. My father was a black belt in judo, but he wasn't a meditator. So one weekend when we went down to the plant, he was a vice president of a potato chip company. So I'm still addicted to potato chips from going there on Saturday and seeing these fresh potato chips come down the ramp and eating them. So his assistant was there, and I asked him if he would ask her to tell me about meditation. So he did that, and she took me into her little office, and she sat me down across from her two chairs, and then she said, "I want you to watch my face right here, just right above my two eyes. And when you see that it starts to get red, I want you to touch it." And then she closed her eyes. So for, a kid who was, I don't know, 12 years old, this was pretty, I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I knew it was pretty unusual. And quite quickly, I mean, like in 3 or 4 minutes, the spot between right above her forehead, between her eyes, started to get red, and it got very red. And then I touched it, and it was hot, which really kind of blew my mind. And so then she took a few more minutes, and it got receded back. And she came back and she said, "Well, meditation is a method to learn how to control your mind and your body and your heart. And so this is an indication of control, of concentration, where I can put my attention on something and really examine it carefully." And she said a bunch of other things, but I don't remember them. I think they were over my head, but it was very clear to me that my experience was with her was not what I was learning in catechism, and wasn't anything like my experience uh, at church on Sunday. So I eventually ended in my early teens, not too much longer, not going to church anymore, and my parents weren't excited about that, but they understood. And I just started looking at everything that I could. And I was kind of on this search, and that was confusing to me. And it had something to do with my place in the universe, and what God did and did not mean. And this notion that you could meditate, you could do something where you could really look into your mind and your body and your heart in a completely different way. So um, I found Doug Hammarskjöld, who was the first and really the most important Secretary General of the United Nations that we've ever had. It was right at the beginning of the United Nations when it really meant something. And Hammarskjöld was a Christian mystic, and he was a meditator. The very first thing he did when he came in as Secretary General of the United Nations was commission the building of a meditation room, which exists to this day. And when it was inaugurated, he gave a talk and he said, um, in a building that is dedicated to peace in the outer sense, there should be at least one room dedicated to peace in the inner sense. So, that, and he was much like my father. He was really a man of action, and so the idea that somehow you could be contemplative and also in the world right from the get-go um, seemed to be an attractive model to me. The problem was is that there was no internet, there were no books on this, there were no courses, and you couldn't find anything written about meditation that from a Western perspective. So in my between my senior and freshman year of college, and here comes the first book, I went to a 2-week retreat that was on nature, God, and man. And it was a series of authors and intellectuals and teachers. And one of them introduced me to a book. We were out on the beach talking, and I was explaining these experiences I just described to you. And he said, there's a book that I think that would be helpful for you to um, look at, and it's called Honest to God, Finding the Ground of Being. And it is by John A.T. Robinson, who is the Bishop of Woolworth in England. And what this book was about is a whole group of the cutting edge theologians of the time. So this is the late 50s and early 60s. Paul Tillich, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Rudolf Altman, people who had dedicated their lives to the church. So they were steeped in the church, but they were steeped even more deeply in the truth and finding a way of redefining God, the term God, that was more in line with their actual experiences as contemplatives. And so the basic premise of this book laid out that the was reframing the idea of God, and not as a being that was out there or up there, but an experience that was beyond words and concepts and actually beyond imagination. That was a mystery that couldn't be grasped conceptually or by belief. And to identify it as some kind of a being um, was a severe limitation of the scope and depth of how we could explore and understand and experience it. So I want to read you one of the paragraphs that just riveted me and really changed everything for me in the search. So this is from Honest to God by John A.T. Robinson. It says, the first thing we must be ready to let go of is our image of God. God is the inexhaustible depth and ground of all being. It is both the deepest mystery and the most immediate reality of our lives. It is both the deepest mystery and the most immediate reality of our lives. This ground is not found in transcending life, but at its very center through the deepest immersion in existence in our relationships with others and nature. The real value of mystical experience is that it informs the common experiences of being alive. Well, I was hooked. Um, this I really got this intellectually just completely liberated me from any previous model I had. And it opened me to the immense world of possibilities. So, and it was focused on finding meaning in life here on earth, not in an afterlife, through the experiences of living and dying and relationships, and actually connecting with life as an expression or manifestation of the single energy that underlies all events. So for me, as a young man, this was like not outside of the box. This meant that there was no box at all. That the potential for exploring the meaning and having a relationship with what is profound was unbounded and without limitation. And I didn't realize it at the time, but later I did, and I certainly do now, that this fundamental conceptual model that I've just laid out would be the foundation and groundwork for all of my later spiritual work and for my life, and that it links directly with the teachings and particularly the mystic wings of Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Sufi and mystic critics, Joseph Campbell. They're all circling around the same mystery described in an open, exciting way. So this set me up a whole new exploration. But this is a very dense book, and it was written quite a while ago. And the problem, at least for me at that time, was that it provided no guidance on how to do the exploration.
Hey,
So
Dennis, can I
yes,
ask real quickly, on that quote, which I thought was really beautiful, it says the mystical experience informs the common experience. And can you tell me the end of that?
yes, it says the real value of mystical experience is that it informs the common experiences of being alive. Um, so maybe I'll copy this and you could post it with the recording. But
Yeah.
like this idea of mystical experience is so powerful for me because it's not disconnected from life and relationship. It's explicitly saying that the value of mystical experience is that uh, it is and should inform our daily life and our daily relationships. Um, so the next thing that I found, I had a buddy. He and I were little spiritual explorers. His name was Billy Hanley, and we're still friends. He's my oldest spiritual buddy, and Billy was living in a Gurdjieff house in San Francisco. So we were always comparing notes, and both of us somehow, I don't remember how we found this, but we found the book by John Lilly entitled "Center of the Cyclone." An autobiography of inner space, the center of the cyclone, an autobiography of inner space. And Lilly, most people remember him from, he was the first, he was a physician, a neuroscientist, a psychoanalyst, and he's the one who did all of the first really cutting edge research with dolphins. So he had a place in the Florida Keys and then out in the Bahamas where they built these houses where the dolphins would actually swim into the house. And so it's like they were living with Lilly and his staff. And he eventually abandoned all that work. And the reason he abandoned it was that he came to believe that the dolphins were highly intelligent, actually more intelligent than human beings, and that to be conducting any of these kinds of experiments was unethical. And so he walked away from it. Um, he had, right after this, a kind of a near death experience that just transformed his life and set him off on a journey to look at every human growth, contemplative, and meditative practice that was popular at the time, And he threw himself intensely into this effort for years and tried to create a comparative model of mind states and states of consciousness that you would arrive at through all of these different models. And so this was fascinating to me, first of all, because it was the first notion I had that you could actually start defining what seemed to be pretty powerful and in some case, quote, altered states of consciousness, and that different systems were getting you to the same place in different ways. And they would call them different things. But Lily's theory was, and I believe that it's true in Buddhist and other practices, is that we call them different things. We're actually talking about the same thing. So Lilly did different systems that involve the body, movement. He created the isolation tanks, which are actually really popular now. Um, a number of different forms of meditation, mystical experiences, prolonged practices, uh, LSD. And the thing that was exciting to me was this book really took you on the journey with him. And it gave you an idea of what a life might look like if it was devoted to the exploration of what might be possible as a human being. Um, and so he had a model, a theoretical model, and then it was all trial and error. So um, this is a quotation from Lily's book, which to this day I believe is exactly what the historical Buddha said in slightly different ways, but is really the touchstone for my practice. And um, this month is a year anniversary of my breaking my back in 5 places, and I've completely recovered, just extraordinary, no damage to my spinal cord. And this fundamental methodology here, which I believe is Buddhist, was my first introduction to it, and which got me through all the recovery and rehab, and is the basis of my spiritual practice. So he says, in the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true within certain limits. These limits are to be found experimentally and experientially. They become further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the body, there are definite limits that cannot be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. So the idea of every assumption, every projection, every truthful discovery, every insight that we have in practice is a stage which then we actually explore that to refine it and to expand it and see what's on the other side of that becomes, in my opinion, the model for a lifetime practice of meditation. So this idea of exploration really captured my mind, and I really this was in the mid late 60s, early 70s. So things were really happening at that time, and so I really threw myself into this, and I earnestly explored biofeedback, guided imagery, group therapy, individual therapy, uh, all of these marathon consciousness workshops that they were having. Amazingly, Scientology and body work, Tai Chi, different forms of meditation. I spent a lot of time with Hindu practices and Zen practices. Um, I met and studied with Alan Watts, and then Ram Dass became my first real teacher. That's where this led me. And, that experience was extraordinary. And at one point in my working with Ram Dass, um, we were having a practice interview, and he said, I think that I have helped you with what I can help you with to the degree that I can. And I'm going to recommend that you go to my tape library and listen to a tape. This is before there was the internet. And he had this huge tape library. And he said, I want you to listen to this tape. And I have a suspicion that you're going to listen to it. And when you listen to it, you're going to feel like you've arrived home. And I said, well, okay, I'll do that. And I said, well, who is the tape by? And he said, it's by Joseph Goldstein. So that's exactly the experience I had. I listened to that tape, and Joseph's clarity was so powerful. I really did feel like I had arrived at something very significant, that I had found an anchor. And then at the same time, I found his book, The Experience of Insight, a simple and direct guide, I think, to Buddhist meditation. And it's a book that is based on when he was very early back from Asia, a 30-day retreat. So it's a day-by-day instruction and questions and answers. So it's just like going on a retreat. And so for me, this was the start of really understanding that there, there was a very clear path, and that there was a form of very powerful meditation. And the insight I had when I read this book, I said to myself, and this was kind of exciting and terrifying. And I said to myself, the person who could actually do that retreat would become a different person than the person who's reading the book right now. And it was a real motivator for me. So within a year, I was practicing with Joseph. And through him, I met Kamala Masters and Stephen Armstrong, who became uh, my longtime teachers, who led me to John Travis, who became my longtime teacher and co-teacher and dear friend. So that really set me off on retreats, Buddhist retreats, in this particular tradition that we do. The next really significant book um, that expanded, each one of these is expanding my understanding of things, was a book that I really love to this day, and it's called How Can I Help, by Ram Dass and Paul Gorman. And it's just an exquisite, beautiful little book showing the direct connection between practice and contemplative meditative work and service to others. And um, the book is set up where it has uh, maybe 12, 15 chapters, each one on a specific topic relating to service. And so there will be 3 or 4 pages with a theme, and then behind it will be 6, 7, 8 stories in the words of different people in a vast myriad of ways that people are serving. And so it was just so valuable, first of all, in connecting up um, practice and service, and then seeing that there's no um, model for how it should look. Um, that the key part is that the other person, the other animal, the environment actually becomes the object of meditation and your contemplative attention, and that you treat the other person, the animal, the environment, with the care and attention as a manifestation of this one energy that underlies all events. So once again, this was just really exciting for me. It eventually led to the creation of Sacramento Insight Meditation. Uh, this is what was the spark uh, of service for me. And there's a course that I did, and I think I'm going to do later again this year, which is based on the book called How Can I Help, where it's a 6-month course, and part of being in the course is everybody has to commit to doing service. And then we do the same thing. There's a theme, and the course, is largely people reporting back in and working with their experiences. The next stage, and these are all happening chronologically, by the way, was Joanna Macy's book, World is Lover, World is Self. And the subtitle is The Psychology of Causation and Interrelationship. And for those of you who don't know Macy, she's a powerful Buddhist scholar. She's primarily a Mahayana teacher, and she's an environmental activist. And back when nuclear power was a big threatening issue, people forget this. She traveled all over the world, and she ran workshops on how can you take all the principles of Buddhist practice into social action so that you can be present, you can be fierce, and you can be loving and not burn yourself out. How do you do that? And so this is a fascinating book on that. And it's based on the process of dependent origination, dependent interrelationship of just behind the surface of things. The Buddhist principle is that there is an entire world happening that you can see and feel and touch of causation and conditionality. And it explains everything that's going on, emotional life, our relationships with other people, in the world itself. So this, up to this point, I had heard about this, I had done some study, but nothing had really helped me, kind of like get it. And so this opened the door for me to beginning to understand and have a taste of anicca, anatta, emptiness, causation, emptiness, all of these larger vessels that hold our practice. And so it really changed everything, in how I was holding practice and how I understood practice. And I was very fortunate that in my training at Spirit Rock, Macy was one of my teachers, and her teaching is very dramatic, dynamic, because it's all interactive, a lot of role playing. Yeah, I mean, it's really challenging, and exciting. So you can hear from this that there's a steady progression where, with Joseph, really anchored me into this practice, with Ram Dass expanding that into service, and then Macy just opening up this entire vast area of practice where you start redefining your sense of self. So there's just a couple more to go here.
Hey, Dennis, sorry.
Yes.
Can you say the name of that book and the author again, please?
Yes. It's a beautiful title. It's called World Lover, World is Self. And the subtitle is Psychology of Causation and Interrelationship by Joanna Macy. And you can hear in that is that it has to do with the transformation of how we understand our sense of self, and that sense of self begins to expand out and encompass, the animal kingdom and the environment and other people. So maybe, I guess in 1993, 1994, Bill Moyers did a series, and I can't remember the name, but it was a series looking at all of the cutting edge things that were happening in medicine. And he did an hour program on John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction program in Massachusetts, which at that point very few people knew anything about. And Moyers actually did the entire 8-week program, and they filmed it. And I think this is still available on YouTube. It's called Healing and the Mind. That's the big title. And then this chapter, which I think is the third one, both in the book and in the series, video series is on John Kabat-Zinn. And it was breathtaking because at that time, once again, it's hard to remember this, but Kabat-Zinn was really the first one to figure out how to language our practice in a way that would be acceptable to just about anyone. It took out all of the spiritual and religious language, but still stayed very, very close to all the foundational issues. And that program of his was just extraordinary. It started out at UMass for pain patients, and within I think 2 or 3 years of this documentary in late 1993, there were 400 hospitals in the United States who had mindfulness-based stress reduction programs. I mean, it was that powerful. And for me, Kabat-Zinn himself, and looking at this program, it was just riveting. And I knew that it had the potential for really making the practice available to a whole group of people that with the prior language we were using, it wouldn't happen. So I saw this as part of the vision for creating Sacramento Insight Meditation. And within a year, 2 years of watching this, I was practicing with and going through training with John and Saki Santarelli, his teaching partner, back in Massachusetts. I had a relationship with them for years, and that led to my being an adjunct professor for 11 years in the Division of Pain Medicine at UC Davis. And then for years, we had mindfulness-based stress reduction programs at SIM. So if you haven't seen that, I would encourage you to watch it and realize that whole program and that program was at a time when there were still people suing school systems for doing a little bit of breathing or stretching at the beginning of class. I mean, you forget how tight things were. So, okay, so kind of running out of time here. So I'm just going to do the last 3 here kind of really quickly. The next one is called Instinct for Freedom by Alan Clemens. Instinct for Freedom by Alan Clemens. Alan was the first American to be a student in residence as a monk with U Pandita in Myanmar. And of course, U Pandita is just this huge influence on, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, this whole group of teachers who have brought this Western form of Buddhist practice to us. It's a fascinating book about first his practicing there. So there's lots of good Dharma in it. And then about him getting sick in a very unlikely path to recovery, and how this actually led him to leave practicing with U Pandita and to leave formal Buddhist practice and to really focus on using the underlying principles of Buddhist practice in environmental and activist causes. And so why I found this book helpful is that it is very challenging. It's very provocative because particularly at that time, and I still do, I have this enormous respect for U Pandita and my core teachers ordained and practiced with him. And so for someone to basically question all of that and to walk away from it was really thought-provoking. And it's also kind of a cautionary tale because I know a number of people who know Clemens, and there's kind of a feeling in the community, and I'm not saying that this is right, but there's a feeling in the community that he kind of lost his way. So I don't know if that's true or not, but reading this book is compelling in the sense of him showing his questioning his practice. And so it really lit a fire for me of questioning my practice. And so just like that very simple thing that we did in the meditation where I said, um, look at the quality of your awareness and your knowing. Well, I mean, it's easy to intellectually know that, but to actually implement that in your life and to question yourself around that is a very powerful thing. So this idea of that the Buddha said that we should question our thoughts, I really felt that Clemens and this book embodied that and found it very challenging.
Dennis, could you please repeat the title and the full name of the author? I missed that.
Yes, it's called Instinct for Freedom, and it's by Alan Clements. It's Clements.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So the ninth one is the second book by Ram Dass, and it's called Paths to God, Living the Bhagavad Gita. And this is the transcripts of a month-long workshop that Ram Dass did in the summer of 1973, which was the summer where the Naropa Institute was founded. So it was kind of, I wasn't there, but people talk about it as kind of a spiritual Woodstock. And the format for this is that Ram Dass would teach in the mornings, and then in the afternoons, there would be breakout sessions that would involve movement and chanting and body work and group process. And one of the people who would handle some of the afternoon sessions was Joseph Goldstein. So the book is interesting. It has a lot of Ram Dass's actual notes. It shows pictures of him and Joseph and everybody doing this together, all the way back in 1973. The value of this book for me is that it really gives you kind of a living insight into the Bhagavad Gita, which I had been working a lot with, but it shows the direct relationship between Hindu and Buddhist practices and psychology. So it's fascinating in terms of discussions of specific methods in the different systems and how they relate to each other. And for me, it was part of a real underlying theme of my practice of finding the commonality of practices between different traditions that support awakening. And once you start to see that and understand it, it gives you a whole new set of tools because you're not limited by something being, Hindu or Buddhist or Taoist. You're looking for the commonalities that support the same thing. Okay, the very last one, and actually the last one is two books. The first one is called I Am That. I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta. And the related book is this book right here, which is entitled The Teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi. So both of these books are about Advaita Vedanta and Hindu non-dualist teachings, which links over with, of course, the Buddhist ideas of non-dual teachings and anicca and anatta and emptiness. So the first one, I Am That, is dense and is confusing because it's transcripts of talks with Sri Nisargadatta, and it seems like he keeps using different languages, and it's confusing. And the reason it's confusing is that he is always teaching from a non-dual place. So once you get that, it's fascinating because it acts as a mirror, because you'll read something and you're completely confused, and you realize the reason you're confused is that you're coming from trying to understand it from a personal, attached, identified perspective, and he's talking from a non-dual unified perspective. And so it just turns your head upside down. It's fantastic, but you have to be at a certain stage of practice to want to do it because it's so challenging. This book, Ramana Maharshi book, is helpful because he's doing the same thing, but there is an introduction to each paragraph which explains the theory of what he's doing, so that when you then read it, it helps you understand the difference between dual and non-dual, unified and non-unified, separate. So I guess in retrospect, I would say look at this book first, the Ramana Maharshi book, because it took me years of working with the Sri Nisargadatta book, and it was troubling. And then at some point, I went over the hump. Okay, so surprisingly, I got through all of that. So I think we have time at least just for one or two comments or questions, if there are any.
I have a
So
question.
So Dennis, this is Philip. I have a quick question.
Yeah, hi, Philip.
I'm looking forward to being with you on Sunday. So I got a little bit confused. I've been writing down all the books, and so this is just a practical question. Was one of your suggested quote readings looking up the Bill Moyers discussion or program, the entire program, or just the one section? Or
I think it would be helpful to go on YouTube
okay,
and look at the section, the Bill Moyers on John Kabat-Zinn and mindfulness-based stress reduction.
okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. The book is basically the transcript of the video. And so the video is really alive, because you can see Kabat-Zinn in action with patients and then being interviewed by Moyers.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Dennis, let's see. This goes back to the meditation that we had early. The quality of awareness and the knowing of your quality of awareness. I'm not clear about the distinction between those two.
Okay. Yeah, this is, it probably a whole night's discussion, right? But so
I'll ask that question at the retreat this Sunday.
Yeah. So the distinction that I was making, and I think this is worth exploring, is that there's two distinct things, and there's one is the quality of the awareness itself. So, for example, you can scan your body at the beginning of a sitting and know that it's tight. And you can scan your body and there's a clarity to the tightness, the degree of tightness, where it is, and the characteristics of it. And, your awareness can be quite bright and your awareness can be pretty dull. You're still aware. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing. And, there's things that we can do if we want to bump up the quality of the awareness. And then the second element is, are we using the awareness to actually know the experience that's taking place? So an illustration of that would be, it's quite easy to lock onto your breath, the movement of your breath as an anchor. And then rather than just using it as an anchor to stabilize, and then once the mind gets stabilized, opening it up to explore, so just staying on the breath, and then it almost becomes like automatic pilot. You're going with it, you're getting very calm, the mind's getting concentrated, but the mind is actually not knowing when the in-breath starts, when it ends, um, uh, not actually knowing that it's experiencing individual sensations as opposed to just breathing an in-breath. So both of these, have our continuum in terms of what's possible. And the further we can move along the continuum on both of these, where we refine these, the stronger practice gets and the more insight we have. So does that help a little bit as a starting place? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm just looking at the clock here, and I think maybe we better wrap this up because I know we'll want some a couple of announcements. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attention and participating in that. I hope some of this was helpful, and may the cumulative effect of our, our good intentions and our effort and our open hearts really contribute in some real way to a reduction of suffering in the world, and bringing just a little bit of happiness and peace into people's lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dennis. This is Jennifer Scott from the Meditation Hall. Blessings to all our friends live.